What's up everybody, welcome back to Ask Dan Anything, and today we have a question from James about self-development. He says, what's the point of self-empowerment through doing the work when I'm starting to realize that I may ultimately be powerless? How do I reconcile with that? So I want to give you guys a bit of context. James is a client of mine, and this comes from some discussions that we've had. And I want to talk about what he means by powerlessness. So a lot of the people that do work with me for coaching end up coming to understand that we cannot control the external world. That no matter how skilled or manipulative or strategic we become, ultimately the world is out of our control. The universe doesn't give a fuck about you. It will do whatever it wants and you can't stop that from happening. And so a lot of people getting into self-development, while they do it with the surface level reason of wanting to improve themselves, what underlies that reason is usually a neediness about trying to control the world, trying to own resources, make people like you, be, protected from dying, whatever. This kind of control over the things you can't actually control. And so what happens with a lot of people doing self-development work is they hit this point where they start to feel hopeless and powerless, because no matter how strongly they work on themselves, the universe keeps showing them that they cannot control it. So how do you reconcile with that? What is the point of working on yourself when no amount of work on yourself will allow you to control the outside world? It's about understanding what power really is. There's something I've been calling lately the realm of power. And I was particularly working on this with the idea of when somebody has power over you. See, nobody can actually have power over you, but they can have influence over a realm of things. And what happens when we feel powerless is when we're focused, our attention is focused on something that's in that realm that's outside of our control and in the control of someone or something else. So an example of this is if I'm focused on money, which is out of my control, then my boss becomes powerful over me because he controls my money. Whereas if I'm focused on how conscientious of a worker I am, which is under my control, no matter what my boss does, he can't affect that. It's up to me. So there's these realms of power. And understanding that self-development is about focusing on what's within your realm. And that is much smaller than what most people think it is. You can't even control your thoughts. You can't even control your mood. You can try to, but as I had a discussion with a client yesterday, we're talking about things like trying to manage your state. It's a real Tony Robbins type thing. Or The Secret, trying to control your thoughts. And all this usually ends up doing is making you feel like you're fake and performing and lying to yourself, and it gives you an OCD attachment to thinking. But that's because we believe that thoughts and mood are under our control. We blame ourselves for having bad thoughts and bad moods because we think we should be able to control that. And that isn't even starting on all the stuff outside of our skin. We think we should be able to control our money, we should be able to control how people feel about us, we should be able to control our health. All these things that we don't actually control, we barely even have an influence on them. We just like to think we do. Self-development is really about where you focus. And I want to talk about a little pathway here. The way I see it, the way somebody's inner world work, first off, there's influences. So this is your external world and how it affects you. The lessons you learn, the people trying to maneuver and manipulate you, the weather, the temperature, all the things that affect you and influence you. Advertising, teachers, everything. And from that, your beliefs form. Your brain reacts to these influences, it draws cause and effect conclusions, it tries to marry things up and categorize things, and it creates beliefs. From beliefs comes thoughts. So your beliefs represent themselves in your mind as thoughts. They pop into your mind as bits of language and videos and just concepts, and that's how your beliefs show themselves to you. And then your emotions are your body reacting to those thoughts. So your emotions see the videos and the bits of language in your head and prepare you to deal with those things that you're thinking about by giving you the mood that suits them. And then there's your behavior. Now, I believe there's 2 points in this system that you can actually intervene with and have some control over, and those are the only 2 points that are worth looking at for self-development. The first one, the weakest one, is influences. You can have some control over what you're influenced by. You can choose where you live, where you work, who you hang out with, what you read and digest, whether or not you're scrolling through Facebook or face down into a self-development course. That's up to you. You know, whether or not you choose to listen to somebody who's a piece of shit or whether you ignore them, whether you choose to stay at your job or quit, depending on how well it suits your values, these are within your realm, but there's still a lot there that's out of your control. For example, if you've got 6 kids and you're barely getting by on money, you may need to work. You know, if you've got, if you've got a health condition that means you're disabled and you need someone to help you and that person's a bad influence, you might not be able to do much about that right now, and so on. There are some limitations. Which brings me to the second point of influence, the real realm of power. And it's the small gap between emotion and behavior. There's very little you can do about your thoughts. They just pop into your mind and they come from subconscious beliefs, which you can do very little about. Then the emotions that react to those thoughts, there's not much you can do about there other than suppress it, which has so many health, what's the opposite of benefit? It's so bad for your health to suppress emotion that there's no point in even trying to control that aspect. But there's this bit between your emotion and your behavior. The only bit, I believe, where any real free will exists, where you get to choose how your behavior reacts to that whole other thing going on inside your head. And I believe self-development is about focusing on that gap, that moment, that space, that silence between emotion and behavior, and developing the ability to make decisions in that gap that benefit your life and the life of those around you, and in particular, decisions that line up with your values. A great example happened to me the other day. I talked about it in my online video journal thing, which is on the 3X Confidence Club on Facebook. Long story short, I was sitting down enjoying something, and these kids came and threw some coins at me, kind of like a prank, pretending I'm homeless or something. And the first time it happened, I thought nothing of it. But then they came and did it again. And a thought popped into my head from some sort of insecure belief. A thought, like a video, popped into my head of me confronting these kids and challenging them and scaring them, you know. There's some insecure part of me that wanted to prove myself to these little rascals. And my heart just started thumping, you know, this rage started building up as a reaction to the thought. Now, all of that happened before I could really grasp that it was even happening. So all this happened outside of my control. But I had 2 choices. I could follow through on that. I could go and confront these kids and make a scene and ruin their day, even though they're just having a bit of fun. Or I did what I did do, which was I smiled and I walked and I went and talked to my girlfriend about it and just shared with her that I'd had this weird experience. And that way I lived by the value of acceptance, I lived by the value of curiosity, I lived by the value of honesty, instead of throwing all those values away and becoming an aggressive douchebag, which is so not aligned with my values. That is your realm of power. That little gap there is the only thing you have any real influence over. And everything else, trying to make money, trying to make people like you, trying to control your thinking, trying to feel good, that's all bullshit. You can't control that stuff. You can influence and suppress and manipulate it for short periods of time, but it always springs back and blows up in your face. And even if you do have some success in doing it, it's such a massive amount of energy required compared to the small energy but high leverage you have in that gap between emotion and behavior. In a sense, self-development is the only power you have if you're focused on the right place. If you're feeling powerless and helpless and like nothing you do works, it's probably because you're focused on an area that's outside your realm of power. And you need to let go of that and bring your attention back to the area that is in your realm of power, which is that a little gap just before you decide on the behavior that you're going to engage in. Your boss can yell at you, scream at you, threaten to tear up your paycheck, but how you react to that with behavior is totally up to you. So I'll leave you with that, James. I hope that somehow answers your question. It's the only answer I've got for it at this stage. For those of you who have questions, please send them through dan@brojo.co.nz. I'm working my way through them all. I'd love to answer your question personally. And if you want to have a look deeper at that little gap that I'm talking about, grab a copy of my book, Nothing to Lose. It's all about knowing where to focus and where to make your decisions. And I will see you all next time.